All right, excellent afternoon to all those who are watching me across the states in Nigeria. Imagine paying for 2 years of rent upfront in a struggling economy. Now, imagine that burden being lifted overnight. A new law in Lagos is sparking a revolution in housing, pitting tenants against landlords. And the question is, who truly wins? This is Real Talk with Kike. And on this note, let me use this opportunity to open the phone lines. Remember, open the show officially. You know, you're welcome to your another edition of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener, your executive producer, your script writer, your chief host on this platform. My name remains Kike Atanda-Owo Abate. I think it's important for us to hear what On This Day Initial segment has for us. When I return, I give my 2 cents on it. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. I know my takeaway from On This Day, this segment today is just this is a prestigious university in Nigeria, and at a point in time, you know, I gained admission into this university when I visited Zaria back in the days. I think that was like probably 24, 25 years ago before, you know, I traveled abroad to study. You know, it's just pity how the prestigious of our universities are dropping due to fall in standard and education, or standard of education rather, and everyone has a part to play. I think that's how I want to end this on this day in history. Everybody has got a part to play. On this note, I think it's important for us to get a message from my sponsors, those who have put me on this platform. And when I return, I dive straight to the topic at hand. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. For countless residents in Lagos, Africa's most populous megacity, the dream of affordable and accessible housing has long been just that of a dream. Lagos faces a housing deficit of 3.4 million units in 2025, up from 2.9 million in 2016, with over 70% of residents renting, you know, and the rental market is under extreme pressure. Many Lagos residents spend up to 40 to 60% of their income on rent, far above the unrecommended 30% affordability threshold. But the landscape is potentially, you know, shifting. The Lagos State House of Assembly has recently passed the new Tenancy Bill, a landmark piece of legislation that, among other things, seeks to cap advance rent payment to just 6 months. The news has been met with celebration from tenants association and fierce debate from property owners, all against a backdrop of a severe housing deficit. To help us unpack these facts, the frictions, and the future of this critical issue, we are privileged to have with us today a renowned legal luminary and public interest attorney. Before we delve into Real Talk with my guest, I think it's important for us to play his profile. And when we return, you will agree with me that it's the right fit to throw light on the issue at hand. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with us. Sir, can you hear me now? This is Real Talk with Kike. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Many thanks for creating time to do this with me. Let's just dive straight to the issue at hand. Mr. Ogunye, while the popular focus is on the 6-month rent cap, I must ask you, what would you say is the core legal or psychological objective of this bill? And the reason why I'm asking you this question is because is it primarily a Tenant Protection Act or a regulatory framework for the housing market or something else entirely? I will need you to please unpack these questions for me.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my thoughts and opinions on this bill. Now, for a start, the bill is a very serious attempt by the Lagos State government, and in particular the Lagos State House of Assembly, to amend the existing tenancy law of Lagos State, which was last amended in 2015. So the bill is an attempt to repeal the extant tenancy law and reenact a new one. Now, having read the provisions of the bill vis-a-vis the provisions of the extant law, it is clear to me, first, that what the legislature seeks to do with this amendment is to bring in new provisions that will further the equilibrium of the engagement field. People call it playing field, but engagement field between the tenant and the landlord by bringing in new provisions that can facilitate the recovery of residential premises and business premises, recovery of possession, which, in spite of the provisions in the old law, the extant law, have become very cumbersome and problematic, right from the touchy issue of whether statutory notices were issued, whether those notices were adequate, and whether the court, in this case, the magistrate court or high court, will shun technicalities and ensure that a tenant or a landlord who may be at the mercy of a recalcitrant tenant is able, in good fashion, to recover his premises. Now, it used to be the thinking that the extant law favored the tenant more than it did, more favor the landlord. So what did the law from, or new bill, from its provisions intends to do is to smoothen those rough edges and ensure that there is more or less evenness in the rights and obligations that enjoy.
All right. I hear you, but I don't know if you caught my earlier introduction, sir, where I mentioned how Lagos currently faces the 3.4 million housing unit deficit in 2025, and up from 2.9 million in 2016. With 70% of Lagosians renting, the rental market is overstretched. With such a huge housing deficit, sir, is regulating tenancy laws without addressing supply side solution like affordable housing sustainability, is it not supposed to be the main focus? And because the reason why I'm asking this question is because I know that many people have argued that this is not what we should be celebrating about. What we should be celebrating is government actually providing more housing. A major concern that landlords, is it the new law that will discourage investment in housing? Because of course everybody are saying that it could get worse from this existing deficit. I must ask you, with all my narrative thus far, how does this bill, sir, balance tenant protection with the need of incentive to provide private investment in housing? Or are there safeguards against landlords finding informal ways to bypass those rules?
Let me state without any equivocation that this bill is not a housing bill. It's not a bill to provide affordable housing based on government initiative and based on initiative of government, mobilizing the private sector on model like PPP and so on and so forth to provide adequate housing for the people. Now, the issue of supply and demand is a very serious issue. And it is clear to me, as it should be clear to any costly observer, that no amount of provisions, innovative provisions, regulations of the tenancy issue in the state will be a substitute for provision of affordable housing. So this is not a law that will, as a matter of fact, make any significant improvement on the issue of the housing deficit by reducing the deficit. Before now, I had argued, I think that it was at the Administration of Justice Summit last year, another one we held this year, where I presented a position that what the extant law, and this is my critique of it, particularly regarding the issue of notices and so on and so forth, which makes it difficult for landlords to recover premises from tenants, recalcitrant tenants who are unwilling to yield up possession, even if their rents have expired, long expired, and they are no longer effectively legal tenants, so to speak, but they still have to be gotten out of the property through a court. My critique was that the difficulty in securing recovery of possession of premises had become a huge disincentive for those who might want to provide affordable housing that will be on rent. So the trend we now see in Lagos in particular is that realtors, those who are developing property, will rather develop property and sell rather than develop property and rent, because they complain that they can't handle the issue of tenants who will not pay as I went due and who will not yield up possession of premises. And on that occasion, I said, look, it has to be revisited. And that's why I said earlier that looking at this new bill is smoothing those rough edges so that if somebody's on a year tenancy, it's a yearly tenant, for example, and is refused to pay rent for 3 months, instead of giving him a 6-month notice and make it difficult for a 7-day notice that it should be given. And when it then goes to court under the new bill, rather than having an elaborate trial as provided by the extant law, which will mean that witnesses will be called, there will be oral proceedings, and so on and so forth. This new bill, innovatively, if you ask me, has provided a simplified recovery process by originating summons, file your affidavit. There will be no elaborate trial, which could go on for 2, 3, or 4, 5 years, really, just to recover possession of premises. So the simplified approach now in the bill is that by originating summons, affidavits are filed, and then the court can quickly reach that conclusion. My contention was that whereas the extant law exempted certain areas in Lagos from the coverage of the law, namely GRA Ikeja, Apapa, Victoria Island, and Ikoyi from the coverage of that tenancy law. This bill has taken out that exemption, meaning that if this new bill is passed, it will cover the entire Lagos. And my position was that, hey, the Lagos state government, in making the extant law before now, realized that it is usually difficult to get rid of tenants who will not want to pay their rents and do the needful. So the upscale area, the highbrow area in Lagos was then exempted from the coverage of the law. What that meant was that people in other areas of Lagos where the law was supposed to operate would continue to contend with the difficulty of moving out tenants. And I was arguing that if it is difficult to get tenants to yield up premises as at when due, people will no longer invest in building property just for rents. So people now prefer to build property and sell. So the housing deficit that you are therefore talking about will continue in Lagos State because it is given that not everybody will be able to own a house or have the means to own a house. And so where do they live? They live in rented property. And if those who build rented property are not able to, once they put tenants, they are not able to then move out the tenant. If the tenants are not doing what they ought to do, then there's a disincentive. People will no longer be encouraged to build property for rent. And so this new law, in my view, or new bill, in my view, tried to address that by simplifying recovery, by shortening notices. Once the tenant is no longer paying for 3 months, albeit is an annual tenant, is a yearly tenant, the landlord is not obliged to give him a 6-month notice and then you do calculation and so on and so forth. The other innovation that I see is that whereas under the old law, if a tenant is playing hide and seek, you cannot see him to serve notice on him, a statutory notice, that the law says must be by personal service. You are then expected to go to court to get another first of substituted service by posting and all that. Now, this new bill is saying that personal service shall include serving on that tenant or the responsible person residing in that tenancy, in that apartment, or by dropping it in his house, in the apartment, or by posting it. So that has already cut out, in my view, the length of time to have taken to go figure out how to get another first in the magistrate court before substituted service and so on and so forth. And of course, the other salient provisions. What I know, as I've said earlier, is that yes, this new bill seems to be an improvement on the old law, the extant law, by defining the rights of tenants, by defining the rights of landlords, unlike the old one, which didn't define this, by defining the obligations of landlord, by defining the obligation of tenant, and so on and so forth. It is, in the final analysis, not a housing bill. And it doesn't address in any significant manner or minuscule manner the housing deficit that we're dealing about. What the law or the new bill just provides is to ensure that there's justice between the landlord and tenants and so on and so forth.
All right, many thanks for your insights thus far. Saying that it does not, define the housing of tenant, but the issue of tenancy laws in Nigeria is often one of poor enforcement, you know, because given Lagos' vast population and informal rental market, sir, what specific and practical enforcement mechanism does this bill really propose? With all your insights thus far, will we see a dedicated tribunal, or does it rely on an already overburdened court system? Because if tomorrow they are saying that they are going to go to court, which has become another thing in Nigeria, are we going to be on the queue knowing that bills are not quickly passed in Nigeria and stand to be corrected? But my second question to you right now, sir, is the fact that this bill is unique to Lagos. Let's tailor it down to Lagos. How much of its potential success hinders on this political will of the current state's government versus being embodied durable institutions? Because listening to you, sir, with all that you have shared thus far, could there be a change in administration rather than its effectiveness of what is on ground right now, as we've seen with other policies that have been brought forward, and when another administration comes in, it's being changed? What's your take thus far with these two questions?
Now, first, I believe that the bill was well thought through before it's presented. As I've said, seen very new provisions that not only protect the rights of landlord, but also the rights of tenants, also protect the interests of government. For example, under the bill, agents or anybody acting as an agent for a landlord must now be registered under the relevant law of 2021 that commands that those who function as agents in realty and tenancy issue must register. Of course, that would then mean that there will be registration fees and something of that nature. So government will get more revenue. It also provides that that tenants, for example, will not be maltreated by landlords. Landlords cannot resort to self-help in getting rid of tenants. They have to follow the due process of law. Now, the bill attempts to cut out delay in enforcing the tenancy law and in securing recovery of premises, business premises, commercial premises, and residential premises. For example, the new bill, makes a provision allowing for virtual hearing. So that's an improvement from the Eastern law. The Eastern law does not have anything like virtual hearing. It also has a provision for sitting on Saturday and weekends and public holidays. The Eastern law does not have such a provision. There are other provisions of that kind in the bill. All these provisions, for me, are intended to facilitate the hearing of tenancy cases and their disposition quickly by court, is to accelerate the enforcement of that tenancy law. And when eventually an order is given for recovery of possession, there are provisions in the law that will enable and capacitate the landlord to also recover possession of the premises. And there's also another innovation. Too often, landlords rent their property to tenants who are desperate to get accommodation in Lagos without renovating the property, without making it tenantable as such. So the building will not be tempered in terms of paint, it will not be properly plastered, and so on and so forth. Now, there's a provision in the bill that if in the course of renting a property, a tenant spends significant money or any money at all to renovate that property, if he's living that property, he will have to recover the money that is spent in renovating that property. Because often landlords just, we let it as it is, go and renovate it. And so some landlords, tenant will come and say, okay, there are no tiles here. I want to change the tiles. There's no painting. The doors are bad and everything. And then they spend their money. Sometimes the money could exceed a yearly rent. And they have no way of recovering it. And then sooner than the time they came in, maybe 2 years or thereabout, the landlord will come back and say, yes, I want to increase my rent. Of course, he knows that that property has been improved in terms of renovation. The value has improved. The rental value has increased. And so the law, you know, the new bill, you know, has provisions governing that and some other provisions. So I think that in terms of enforcement of this law, if it is passed, if the bill becomes law, there are sufficient provision in it that will aid enforcement much more than we have under the current law. The second issue is whether, you know, in terms of policy and legislation, you know, the legislation could be changed tomorrow. Now, let's take it. The legislation may be improved upon, may be amended, may be repealed, may be scrapped. Is within the prerogative of the legislature to do this. But I think that the legislature in Lagos State will not behave like an ostrich. It has to be sensitive to the sociology of this, to the economics of this in Lagos State, to the environmental issue involved, and to the need to really deal with the housing deficit. I have said that if, and I'm saying this conscientiously, because when I was making that argument, there were people, you know, who on a lighter note said, Jiti, you have a socialist bent. Why are you now saying that it's so difficult and cumbersome for landlord to recover premises? And I said, look, a government cannot address the issue of, you know, canceling the housing deficit as it has the power to do and an obligation to do on the back of private individuals who have put up property for rent and who are likely, if they are able to get rent as a when due, you know, have other property like that. So more so that thereby the housing deficit by private initiatives and investments can then be narrowed. That government cannot attempt to have a welfare state by not providing, you know, accommodation, by not providing housing, you know, through a robust housing policy on the back of individuals who will now find it very difficult to recoup their investment and all that. And I argue then that this is a major disincentive. So that's why new people who are investing in the realty sector now, in the housing sector, will just sell, will just build up property and sell. They are not interested in building up property to rent. So only individuals are doing so. And yet, in a state like Lagos, where it seems, you know, tough for everybody to have his own
unfortunately, sir,
housing
I have to
mortgage and so on
interrupt
and
your
so
thought
forth.
process. Can you hear me, sir? Apologies, I have to interrupt your thought process. We need to go on a quick break, but when we return, the conversation will continue. Please stay with me. I'll be right back. This is Real Talk with Kike. Many thanks, sir. All right, glad to know you're still right there with us. In case you just joined the show, again, I say welcome to Real Talk with Kike, where we have been having deep and critical conversation with my legal expert, Mr. Jiti Ogunye. on the newly passed Lagos Tenancy Bill, and we've been discussing the law's intentions. But now I'm moving to the practical realities, the enforcement, the unintended consequences, and what this truly means for the everyday Lagosian trying to find a place to call it home. Again, I must say many thanks, Mr. Ogunye, for all that you have shared thus far. Let's continue to, have real talk on this topic at hand. But before I come to you, sir, let me use this opportunity, this medium, to quickly open the phone lines for those who would like to be part of this conversation. You can call the studio number that will be showing, that is showing on your screen right now. And of course, we are streaming live on Facebook, both on Silverbell platform and on Real Talk with Kike platform. Sir, I know time is fast spent, but I must quickly ask you, before we move to the last segment of the show, because many Lagosians, or many Lagos residents, spend 40–60% of their monthly income on rent, far above the recommended 30% affordability threshold, which was one of my conversation when I was opening the show today. Does this bill genuinely ease the tenant's burden, or is it just another legal framework that won't reduce that won't reduce the financial pressure? Do you think, sir, that this provision will protect tenants, or will it backfire with landlords increasing rent up front or refusing even certain tenants? Because in this Lagos, we have seen how single ladies, who are working tirelessly, to want to put a roof over their heads, are being denied from renting certain property. We have also seen a situation where landlord would deliberately size you up, sir, and decide to say that they want to increase the money to about 5–6 million naira for the same property that is going for 2 million or 1.5 or maybe max 3 million naira. What's your take thus far on this question?
Now, there was a presidential shot. I think that the first that the current president will have. He came to Lagos and he had that shot. And one of the journalists who were there asked the president how to rein in the rampaging cost of inflation in the country and cost of goods and services, whether there should be a price control mechanism. And the president quickly responded by saying he didn't believe in, fixing prices of goods, services, and commodities, that he believed in supply and demand. Supply, that if you supply the market very well, that prices crash, and that's how. So I'm using that as an illustration. This bill, as insisted, is not dealing with serious housing issues. It's not even attempting to fix the rents collectible in certain areas by saying rents in this area cannot go beyond this and so on. This new bill is not saying that. There has been a tepid attempt in the past to do, but it's not working. What the bill does is to provide that a sitting tenant, for example, cannot pay, who is a monthly tenant, cannot pay more than 3 months rents at any given time. And if he does, he shall be guilty of an offense. If the landlord demands that, the landlord shall also be guilty of an offense. And for a yearly tenant, he also cannot pay more than 3 months. He cannot pay, he can pay his yearly rent, but the landlord will not be able to collect more than that yearly rent. In the Eastern law, it was put at 6 months. So it's reduced to 3 months. Has that, affected the negotiation balance or impacted on the tenant, so that the tenant would then be able to save more money rather than spending almost his entire income on housing? No. The bill does not address the quantum of rent, the rent that has to be given and all that. Indeed, in a way, the bill may impact on the rents, so that the rents will even become higher, because the bill is insisting that agents should be registered, so they will have to pay registration fees, as I said earlier. The bill is also, talking about what another bill is talking about, that the issue of tax, which before now has not been part of the law, as they introduced into it, that you have to ensure that tax is paid on rents that is collected, and that building is also insured, because there's a law that requires insurance of buildings. So if all these things were to be done, certainly, the landlord may want to recoup all the money that was spent in that regard, and that may shoot up the issue of rent. But the bill, as I've said, has not dealt with the issue of affordability. It has not dealt with the issue of discrimination. For example, there are landlords who will say, oh, I don't want to rent my property to a single lady. I don't want to rent my... So the bill has not looked at that. And these are still serious issues, because if the bill were to provide, for example, that you cannot needlessly discriminate, that would be a validation of the constitutional provision that provides against discrimination of citizens on the ground of sex, ethnicity, and so on and so forth. I don't want to dabble into the issue of ethnicity, because I also know that that's part of the
That's
issue.
part of the issue.
Part of the issue. But I think that the bill has this beautiful provision, and discussions like this are very good, because some of the salient issues that this discussion may bring out can be then factored into the bill to make it more robust and all-encompassing, and to ensure that it covers as many issues pertaining to tenancy matter in Lagos as much as possible. So discussion like this is very, very good and very necessary.
All right, many thanks, many thanks. This might be my last question to you, sir, because of time, because we have the last segment of the show. I know that tenancy right has been emphasized with a lot of your submission, as well as you throwing light on the landlord's rights as well. But, with all that you have shared thus far, I'm not so sure if I really captured, does this bill adequately address issues like property damage, nuisance tenants, pardon my word, or lengthy eviction processing for legitimate reasons, ensuring fairness is a two-way street? Because unlike when you were ending your submission earlier, you were talking about, ethnic issue that is being brought to form with most of the landlords. We keep it real on this platform, but a significant portion of Lagos residents live in a formal, settlement like slums under very different tenancy arrangements. Sir, how does this bill impact, or does it even reach these communities and their unique landlord tenants dynamics? You should know what I'm talking about with all these slums communities. What do you have to say to it quickly, sir, in a minute, before we move on to the last segment of the show?
The law assumes that tenants will be housed in buildings and dwellings that properly could be called buildings and dwellings. But we know that, many Lagosians with low income and, whose means of livelihood very, very meager, live in shanties, live in areas and so on and so forth. This law does not provide for them. This law, for example, does not compel that, landlords or people providing housing must provide houses that are really tenantable and where people can live, dwellings that can answer to their names as decent accommodations. And so, to that extent, I don't think that, as I've said earlier, this tenancy bill, can, in any stretch of imagination, be regarded as a housing bill.
Right, many thanks again for all your submission thus far. It's been a very enlightening one with you today on Real Talk with Kike. But before I let you go, sir, there's a last segment of the show that I call Trending Story. These are stories that binds us as Nigerians, as Africans, and this is where I, as a host, I can exercise my opinion, so to speak. And the first trending story that caught my attention is that of this Simon Ekpe that is being jailed for terrorism in Finland. You know what, sir? Before I come to you, let me give my submission on this, because I'm really excited that Finland, has finally sentenced Simon Ekpe, Ekpa, whatever. This man has brought nothing but pain or confusion and division to Nigeria while he enjoys his own life abroad, from the comfort of Finland. He was busy using social media to tell young people at home, to fight, to riot, to kill, and ordinary Nigerians were the ones paying the price. And guys, when I decided to take this story, I felt like I needed to follow our history, because our history as a people should have taught us better. In 1967, Ojukwu declared Biafra, and that single decision led to a civil war that killed over 1 million Nigerians, most of the women and children who died from hunger and sickness. Decades later, Nnamdi Kanu and his IPOB group started again. What was supposed to be a peaceful movement soon turned violent, and since 2021, over 3,000 people have died in Southeast because of this agitation. From attacks to sit-at-home enforcement and clashes with security forces, businesses are destroyed, schools are often shut down. Billions of naira are lost every week because people are so afraid to go out, to step out. And the painful part, guys, these agitators are not the ones suffering. They live safely abroad. Their children go to school without fear. Their businesses are being run at the comfort of their wherever, but they use our own brothers and sisters as pawns in their dangerous games. Can we wake up? If we look at how advanced countries handle successions, the story is very different. In the UK, Scotland held a referendum in 2014, if I'm correct, to decide if they should leave the UK. No bloodshed was, there was no bloodshed. No shops were burnt. No offices were burnt. No lives were wasted. In Canada, Quebec did the same thing twice. In 1980 and in 1995, they voted peacefully and life went on. That is how it should be if people truly, genuinely want change. This is a lesson for us as Nigerians. You don't destroy your own people in the name of freedom. You don't burn your house to prove a point. Agitation should be done with dialogue, with unity, with democracy. I don't know whether we don't understand the definition of democracy. Not with violence and bloodshed. I really want to thank Finland for showing justice. I was waiting for this to happen. Their court has proven that they care about peace and about the millions of Nigerians who just want to live in safety. May we never allow selfish people to drag us into another war that will waste innocent lives. Nigerians, or will I say Nigeria, need peace. Not another turnaround of tears. Enough is enough. Can we please come together to dialogue for a better Nigeria? Is the question I'm putting on the table. Before I come to you, sir, for your own submission on this, let me quickly take the second trending story so you can give your submission on both. The second trending story that caught my attention is that of the Dangote group that reacted to Fina's sister's death. Let me first off open the medium by saying my condolences to the Otabo family. It is such a shame that a brilliant young graduate, like Ruth, had to die in such unfortunate circumstances. When tragedies like this happen, we must look beyond just pointing fingers at people, blaming the Dangote truck driver alone. The real stakeholders that should be held responsible are the governments, the transport management system in Nigeria, and even road users themselves. This is a systematic problem. I must emphasize on this platform. This is a systematic problem, not just a one-off fatal accident like this happening on our roads every single day. While we want to console the Roots Otabo family, I also need to ask ourselves, or we need to ask ourselves the bigger question: how do we stop the next person from dying? A dead person cannot return. That's the truth. That's keeping it real. But we owe it to the living to fix what is broken. The government must do better, must do more, from proper road construction to safety measures to stronger enforcement of transport regulations, I must emphasize, to build a society where people can actually travel without fear of losing their lives, losing their loved ones. Another issue we must address is a social media sensationalism. Social media is fast becoming a tool that drags us backward instead of pushing us forward. Too often, Nigerians youth join the bandwagon of trending noises rather than focusing on real solutions when issues arise. This is not just a Nigerian issue, though. It's a global thing. But I feel that there's something wrong with us more as Nigerians when we find ourselves in funny circumstances. But in our case, it's hurting us more badly as Nigerians. Instead of us asking the right questions about insurance, accountability, and road safety, the conversation online is reduced to hashtags, name-calling, and sensational headlines. Social media is a powerful tool, guys. You can never come on my page and you will leave my page without not being informed on something. Social media is a powerful tool. And I was never on social media. I joined social media, I think 5 years plus, or almost 6 years ago. You know what? How do we use that tool to impact lives? But in Nigeria, it often turns into a place of noise rather than solutions. Take this tragic case of this Ruth Otabo, for instance. A young graduate with her own life ahead of her, cut down by a truck driver, by a Dangote truck. Instead of asking the hard questions, was the truck insured? Has the family been compensated? Is the driver being investigated? The conversation has been reduced to Dangote this, Dangote that. Was Aliko Dangote physically driving the truck? I'm asking him pay. For example, if a vehicle belonging to the Ministry of Finance, for instance, accidentally kills somebody, do we start, I don't know, start harassing the Minister of Finance personally? Come on, guys, no. But when it involves Dangote, people immediately drive his name. His faces will be splashed all over all the blogs, as if he was the one physically behind the wheel. Many even see it as a money-making opportunity for the family. Yes, justice must take its full course. So justice must take its course. And the driver must be held responsible. But we must separate the CEOs from the organization. The law treats them as two different entities. Even so-called professional journalists and media houses are guilty of this sensationalism that I'm talking about. I keep it real on this platform. Headlines are framed with CEOs' faces rather than the institution responsible. If something happens again in NNPC, let me set another example. You will see the faces of the head of NNPC all over the front pages of newspapers as if it's the one that is behind the real case, even when the individual has no direct involvement in the incident. This is a misleading and unfair narrative that has become a culture in our country. Sometimes I ask myself, that is the reason why they call me professional journalist, because they expect you to say certain things that they feel that will trend. I have sponsors. I'm well trained. I read mass communication. I just did stubborn on the profession. So as a people, we need to stay more focused, more objective, more education on this issue. Only then we can move forward or move from empty noise to real solutions that will prevent future tragedies like Fruit's case. Unfortunately, sir, I don't know if I can come to you because my guests are running commentary in my ears that we need to go. But I want to say many thanks to you, sir, for all your submission thus far. I wish I could hear your thought on this trending story. Many thanks to you, my resourceful guest, Mr. Jiti Ogunye, for lending your voice on issues that affect us all. And this is where I draw the curtains of the show.